What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. We're going to go over my top trade targets for week 4, trying to identify either who's been getting unlucky or maybe whose situation could improve moving forward. We'll start off with that second one. Now, this isn't really for those of you who have started off a little bit slow. If you're like, 0-3, 1-2, maybe want to take more of a short-term approach to trading and not a long-term approach. This is for those of you who are like, 2-1, 3-0. You can afford to maybe lose 1, maybe 2 in a row to play the long game, right? My thought is trade for Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall if you can get them at like a really good discount, right? We're not paying what people actually drafted them for. People drafted Garrett Wilson in round 2, Breece Hall in round 3 or 4, kind of depended there. You're not spending that, right? But if you can buy them for like relatively cheap, I honestly cannot see the Jets sticking with Zach Wilson all season. I don't think they're going to stick with him very much longer. They could bring in a free agent. They could trade for someone. But I just don't see them sticking with Wilson. They have an elite defense. They have fantastic playmakers on offense. With a half-competent quarterback, not even a good quarterback, just a half-competent quarterback, this is a really good team and one that could genuinely still squeak into the playoffs. So, given that both Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall's value are way down right now, and again, rightfully so, because in the current situation, you almost can't even start either one of them. Now, they had difficult matchups in some of these games, and you can't put everything on Zach Wilson at times. Like the ground game still needs to be a little bit better. But with Wilson at quarterback, it is just so easy for defenses to sell out and stop the run, force Wilson to beat him deep. And it's just not going to be successful for the Jets. If we remember back to last season, though, Mike White is not some god at quarterback. He's not the greatest quarterback of all time. But they switched from 27 pass attempts per game with Wilson right over to literally starting the next week on 43.8 pass attempts per game when Mike White took over. They will open up this offense with a half decent quarterback. I'm thinking they're not going to stick with Wilson. They're going to bring someone else in. Hopefully, it's through a trade, but regardless, someone else will be the quarterback. And when that happens, you're going to see the value go way up for these two. Garrett Wilson right now is 40th in expected fantasy points per game, 32nd in actual because he hit on that long touchdown. I don't think, again, you're spending where he was, the wide receiver 10 or so in drafts, but expected is 40. I think he's going to finish a little bit earlier than 40th. And if they bring someone else in, he's probably, if they brought in just a normal quarterback, someone's backup right now, trade for someone, he's a top 20 wide receiver no matter who that quarterback is. So think somewhere in that wide receiver 30 range, in that general bucket. I think that's good to be trading for Garrett Wilson. And then Breece Hall, 39th in expected fantasy points per game, 48th in actual. His, though, is also trending up for the snaps, right? Snap count by week, 31%, 34%, 49% last week. They're giving him more touches. That's what we've talked about this season. He's going to start the season when we didn't even know if he'd be fully healthy to start the year. But he starts the year healthy, or quote unquote healthy, getting better each week. He's going to earn more and more and more snaps. He is obviously better than Dalvin Cook. You see Dalvin Cook, obviously on the other end of this, 50% of snaps, 36%, 25%. Cook's snaps going way down. Breece Hall's going way up. Obviously, that's going to continue. It's not going to get to 100%, but Breece Hall is going to be the feature back very soon. Again, they bring someone else in. The value of these two are going up. And again, if you're 1-2, you're 0-3, I'm not making this trade because I don't think that happens this week. But if you're 3-0, why not? Why not take a shot? Because it also means you probably have a pretty good team. You can afford to maybe give something up and hope that you can hit on a Breece Hall down the stretch. I'd also continue going after Josh Jacobs. There was a really good tweet the other day talking about the first 3 weeks of the season and how that's not exactly a roadmap for what's going to happen at the running back position rest of season. And I think that's really important to remember. If you think back to last year, the running backs 3, 4, and 5 through 3 weeks were James Robinson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Cordero Patterson. They finished 76th, 61st, and 39th over the final 14 weeks. The running backs 1 through 5 at the end of last season, half PPR scoring, were Eckler, McCaffrey, Jacobs, Henry, and Saquon. But through 3 weeks last season, only Saquon was a top 10 running back as they ranked 20th, 11th, 28th, 12th, and 2nd in scoring through 3 weeks. Jacobs in particular only had 9.5 points per game last season, only one more than he has right now through 3 weeks. And then he scores 32, 28, 35 over the next 3 weeks. The role absolutely locked in for Jacobs. The production is coming. I just want to point out that it's only been 3 weeks when we have these players who are getting unbelievable roles in their offense and have produced really well in the past, just haven't done a ton yet and haven't scored touchdowns yet. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. He didn't do well last season for the first 3 weeks. Then he goes off down the stretch. He's played 80%, 73%, 82% of the snaps through 3 weeks so far. He's handled 90% of the running back carries, 64% of the targets. He's now 8th in expected points per game, only 31st in actual points per game. He's not going to average 2.4 yards per carry all season, and he's going to score eventually. Trade for him before those go up. I'd also trade for Calvin Ridley. Goes off in week 1, but Jaguars have had 2 really rough games in a row. They've scored 9 and 17 points in the last 2 weeks. But this is an elite offense. I'm 100% sure of that. And they're going to turn things around eventually. They ranked 9th with 23.9 points per game last season. They've talked all offseason about wanting to finish top 5 this year with at least 27 or 28 points per game. But right now, I think a lot of people view week 1 as the fluke, whereas weeks 2 and 3 are what we should be like expecting this season. I think it's the reverse. I really do think we should be expecting them to produce more like week 1 going forward and not like week 2 and 3 when they're scoring 9 and 17 points. I think just Ridley's just a really good player to buy low on right now. Also, don't be scared of the 2 London games coming up over the next few weeks. They're actually kind of fortunate. Like the London games don't really count towards their home games this season. They have more home games than away games, but really the London games are home for them. They play there every year. A lot of the fans there in London are Jaguars fans, and so the next 2 weeks sort of is like a mini home trip for them, but at least looking at it from like the crowd perspective, it's going to be positive for them, almost like a home game. So you get extra home games this season. And then also, he's just a buy in terms of the actual volume. So not only do I think the offense itself will get better, which will increase expected points per game because they're scoring more, they're moving the ball more, and so his opportunity will increase. But just given what's happened so far, he's still 18th in expected points per game, only 37th in actual. That's a buy candidate. I'd also look to trade for the Eagles offense. Now, you can't do Swift, obviously, because he went off, and I wouldn't look to buy Swift right now. You can't do A.J. Brown anymore. He went off last week. We were buying him before. Can't really do that right now. But I would go after Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert if you need a quarterback or a tight end. Hurts actually leads all quarterbacks right now in expected fantasy points difference. So if you look at their expected fantasy points, subtract out what they've actually scored, Jalen Hurts has gotten most unlucky of any quarterback so far this season. He is first with 26.7 expected points per game. That is a monster number. He's only actually scored 19.2 points per game. That is 7th among quarterbacks. Main thing has been touchdowns. He still has an unreal share of the team's touchdowns, and that's going to continue every single time they get close. They do that cheat code play where they just get pushed in, but they're also scoring 1 fewer touchdown per game than last season. Again, it's only through 3 weeks. Like, this is what I'm saying is it's going to increase, it's going to even out, but they're also tied for 10th right now, 2.7 per game. They're going to score more touchdowns. Those touchdowns are likely going to come through Jalen Hurts. He's also been just a little bit less efficient passing so far. Through 3 weeks, he has a career low in yards per completion, yards per attempt, touchdown rate. He's got a career high in interception rate. He's thrown for 33 fewer yards per game than he had last season. I attribute that to, one, small sample size. Weird things going to happen in a small 3-game sample. But also they played at New England. They played at Tampa Bay in 2 of the first 3 games. Not easy places to play. It's also teams that didn't really push them. Like New England, that game was close. Theoretically, the actual box score wasn't as close for Tampa Bay, but like theoretically, Tampa Bay had chances kind of towards the end, but like neither Tampa Bay nor New England at any point in the game pushed the Eagles to be like, oh no, we might lose this game. We need to be aggressive on offense. The Eagles kind of knew for the vast majority of both games, they were going to win. They were playing with the lead. They didn't have to be aggressive, but their schedule has like decent defenses they're going to play, but those teams also now have good offenses. They're going to play Dallas twice. They're going to play San Fran, Miami, Buffalo, Kansas City. Teams that, yes, have good defenses. We don't love that in fantasy, but who also have offenses that are going to force the Eagles to be aggressive, to not just run the clock out, limit their plays, and really just limit like who's scoring besides the running backs. Because when they have these like 8-9 minute drives to just end games because they're winning and they don't have to be aggressive because they're up by 2 scores, that kills it for anyone who's not named DeAndre Swift or Kenneth Gainwell. And so when we don't have those games happening, we have games where maybe they're trailing, their production is going to go up. And again, whenever you have, a player who's number 1 in expected points per game, who's also the most unlucky, like, of course, you're going to want to be training that player. And same thing kind of goes for Goedert. He's not first, obviously, in expected points per game, but he's been underperforming this season, 8th most unlucky tight end this season. Volume isn't amazing, but again, it kind of goes back to what we've talked about. Well, they haven't had to throw the ball as much. The passing numbers are down. That's going to impact Dallas Goedert. Over the last 2 years, he's averaged 4 receptions for 56.7 yards per game. This season, 3.7 receptions, only 21 yards per game. And it's not just week 1 bringing it down. He only had 22 yards in week 2. 41 yards in week 3, no touchdowns in the season. Again, we know he's good. We know the Eagles are good. They're going to be pushed a little bit more in future games. And so I would definitely trade for these two before they have a game where, they're going to have to do it. Again, Dallas twice, San Fran, Miami, Buffalo, Kansas City. That's all coming up in the near future, kind of in like the heart of the schedule. They're going to have to play a lot better in those games. I think they're going to be really good players to trade for right now. Value's going up. Also, slight bonus. It should almost matter nothing, but if you look at the playoff schedule for Dallas Goedert, he does have 3 good matchups. He's got 3 matchups that will be positive for tight ends and 3 teams that we expect to continue being good matchups for tight ends. If anything, get a little bit better. So good matchups later in the season for him as well. Last player we'll go over is T. Higgins. I know this one's going to feel gross, but you just have to. You have to send a low ball offer, especially whenever T. Higgins does bad, like he does real bad. Like T. Higgins' floor is very, very low, and when he has these terrible games, they're horrendous, right? We saw it in week 1. We saw it, on like a national television game. It was the Monday night game last week. Just couldn't catch anything, even when it was right to him. So 2 games this season, he's done absolutely nothing. The people who drafted him have to be furious, have to be frustrated. You have to send a low ball offer, especially when something like that happens on Monday Night Football. Everyone was watching that game. But he's still 11th in expected points per game. And that's even with Burrow being injured. Remember, the expectation for points per game is basically just opportunity. How much opportunity is that player getting? Where are these targets coming, right? 7 targets and within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage is worth less in expected points per game than 7 targets in the end zone, obviously, right? Because we have a chance to score touchdowns on those targets. The expectation is not like a projection as to what should be happening without looking at the production, right? The expected points per game is saying these are the targets they're getting, these are where they're getting them on the field. As the offense gets better, that expectation is actually going to go up. When we see the Bengals put it together with Joe Burrow, they're going to have more passing yards, more touchdowns. These targets are going to be coming in the red zone more. Remember, they didn't do very well these last few weeks. They haven't been scoring very much. So these targets haven't been coming towards the end zone. That's going to even increase even further in the future. And so when you have 11th in points per game right now, it would probably be higher than that had Burrow been healthy. And right now he's 44th in actual points per game. So not only is he getting a little bit unlucky, again, he's been dropping these passes. It hasn't all been luck. It's been on him for parts of it, but he's been underperforming. And the team's been underperforming. It's just a great opportunity to buy low. Honestly, I'll throw in Kyren Williams as like one more. He is 3rd in expected points per game. He's been playing 1 billion snaps. Don't have the number at the top of my head, but it's like 95%. And I believe it was 100% of the snaps on Monday night. I just did the rest of season rankings, and he came out as the running back 6 in half PPR scoring. Maybe that's a little bit risky, and I definitely wouldn't give up running back 6 value to get him. But I bring him up just because, like, whenever we have a player like this who was free agent, right? He was on a free agency. People added him after week 1. Whenever they add a player like that and then they have a few bad games, they're not very efficient, they're going to be a little bit more hesitant and be like, okay, like, is this role going to continue? I mean, if he's playing 95% and 100% of the snaps, the role is probably going to continue. Also, I bring it up because I was also doing the weekly rankings as well, and he has a tough matchup this week. The Colts are a very difficult matchup for running backs, and so with Kyren coming off a bad game, being inefficient, having a tough matchup, maybe send a really low ball offer right now. Maybe it won't get accepted because it's a low ball offer. But then if he goes out there and he has like 3 yards per carry, doesn't score, doesn't have many receptions, he'll have back-to-back kind of dud games as a player people added off free agency. Even if he's playing, 90, 95% of the snaps, people will be much more hesitant, much more willing to trade him. So I think he's another player. Send an offer in, see if you can get one done this week for low. And again, he's running back 6, but I would only spend like a running back 2 value to get him. But then next week, maybe you're setting up a trade then. So that's like 8 or 9 players that I would buy low on right now. I have a much larger list on the website if you want to check that out. Also has the full rest of season rankings and projections there as well. You can take the projections, put them into the trade calculator, which also now has the power rankings. So if you want to re-download the trade calculator, it has power rankings for your league now as well. I'll be back tomorrow with a full breakdown of every game this week. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. That, my friends, is this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here. Thanks for watching.